Folks, I'm Jaby Koay, joined by Koay.
It's your boy!
He's all the way in Denver, Colorado, and so we're doing this remote. We're going to look at VFX Artists react to Shang-Chi Bad and Great CGI from Corridor Crew. I thought this could be a fun video to do, as we are both fans of Shang-Chi. Sintel, I think, is a bigger fan of Shang-Chi than I am, but I appreciate the film nonetheless, saw it twice. The VFX is a big part of the movie, as with a lot of Marvel films, but I mean, especially in the third act of Shang-Chi, I mean, good God, there's a lot of VFX there. So
you felt that kind of jumped the shark a little bit, I feel. But whoa.
I think it jumped the dragon.
Jumped the dragon. I see what you did there.
Dragon, touch the dragon. Dragon Ball Chi.
Dragon Shang-Chi.
Yeah, there you go.
Shang, god darn it. Say it correctly.
You guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up to let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. If you haven't already, maybe subscribe to Corridor Crew as well. There's a link in the description below for the video we're about to watch if you want to hit the original with an upvote. Also, Sintel has got his own YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sintel. Let's jump into this.
There were about 168 blue screen shots in this one little sequence.
I'm going to be inclined to say this guy's CG
He said a little
all
sequence.
the way up until right here.
This is ridiculous.
But isn't it cool?
Yeah,
is
no,
cool.
it's amazing.
We spent probably 7 months talking about how we were going to shoot it.
Can I guess how you did it before?
Yes, please do.
Wow, 7
Everybody,
months.
welcome back to another episode of Visual Effects Artists.
When they say they spend 7 months talking about something, what does that mean?
Right.
Like
That means probably 2 months of them drinking and talking about it at the bar. I can promise you that much. Yeah.
We're joined here by Joe Farrell. He's incredibly accomplished. He's worked on a ton of films that you've watched, that you've heard of, that you love, including most recently being a visual effects supervisor on Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I was the additional visual effects supervisor, mainly working on the second unit. I absolutely adore being on set. A lot of people don't, because on set can have vast periods of time of boredom. The Shang-Chi was far from boring. I just smiled from ear to ear working on this film because it was so much fun.
Oh, and Clint's here. Welcome back, Clint. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Clint's
Good to have you back, man.
Yeah, it feels like I never left.
Just so you know, Clint actually retired from Corridor Crew. He's got his own thing that he does now. So every now and then,
Really?
every now and then he guests on the show.
Okay.
Let's jump in.
Let's just jump on in.
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
So there's a lot of talk about this bus sequence that we did. Because of the pandemic, we had to shoot about 5 different countries in the world and brought together by artists all working from home. So it was quite an achievement and quite a spectacular sequence.
I mean, it's a fight scene, right? So I got to comment on the fight. It's like, that's so classic Jackie with the whole jacket thing, and it just comes from Brad, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So Brad Allen, which unfortunately he passed away recently, he brought his stunt team he'd been working with over the years with Jackie Chan and the stunt crew over there. That department was a powerhouse with this movie. Andy, the stunt super.
So I don't know if you can see him back there on the right. This guy's name is Andy Cheng. I used to kind of flip with him. I was too nervous to be next to him, honestly. But he went to LA Valley College, and I got to hang out with him a few times. Like me and my dad had lunch with him. I hung out with him and another stunt buddy, and we all had dinner. Like, I've been around this guy a lot when I was a kid. Very, very cool guy. But I recognized him because he was a stunt guy in so many Jackie Chan movies. Like, you can really clearly see his face in Rush Hour 1 and Rush Hour 2. Yeah,
Okay.
this guy's like, he's been around a long time doing like stunts and whatnot. So it's no surprise he's here, part of Brad Allen's crew.
He's almost like a stunt royalty in a sense, huh?
Supervisor for this sequence. I think he'd spent many years working with Jackie, and he was definitely channeling the use of all garments and definitely utilizing the bus itself. The bus became part of the fight and becomes quite integral to the entire sequence. We had a total of 4 buses. 2 of them we had to modify for real stunt work, and then the other 2 one of them was on some air bladders, and the other one we had elevated up on this amazing rig where they could hold the whole bus and articulate it like 40 degrees
Amazing.
to 30 degrees.
so Young Lee and Chris Cowan, they action designed with Brad Allen, and they put together a whole previs for this, right? I would assume.
I believe it's called stunt viz. So initially what happens is they stunt visit, they work out the whole fight sequence with similar cameras to what you're using. We then needed to, as the visual effects department, would come in and previs all the pieces that integrated with that.
Got you.
So they would then modify the stunt viz according to what we had prevised, and it was a back and forth process to finally get this.
Wow, that's nuts. Okay, it's one thing to have that many stunt buses, which is that's incredible. That makes sense too, based on having the room to have the cameras to get the proper angles in order to get that stuff done. But I also think it's like really genius that they picked this bus, because if you strip away the fact that it's just a method of transportation, it's like a jungle gym in there. It's all kind of bars and poles that you could swing on from the inside of it, from the outside of it, and they seem to use every piece of that space. But now that we know that you can like take bits and pieces of that bus out in order to make that crammed space feel a lot more breathable, that's just really cool insight.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea just how complex this was. Like, I knew that there was green screen involved, but I didn't know, like, the contraptions that they were using to make the bus do what it was doing. You know, you have a sense when you worked on a lot of film projects, even small budget stuff, like, you have a sense as to what's going on, but good God, like, it's a single fight scene in the movie. Like, you think about what Jackie Chan goes through, or anyone else who does fight scenes, like in Hong Kong and stuff. They're not putting buses on hydraulics and shit. Like, it's not going to this level. They're doing it like mostly for reals as much as possible, right? And they'll cheat where they can. This is really complicated. Like,
yes.
Wow.
All this is shot on blue screen in Sydney.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I come from a compositing background, and so my pet peeve is car comps, purely because of just simple things that you can do that sometimes go missed and make it look fake.
Such as?
I'm not going to tell you.
That's right, you got to pay me.
All right, yeah, I'll tell you. There were about 168 blue screen shots in this one little sequence.
Yeah, so looking at this, right, there's a bunch of blurry edges, and they're perfect edges, right? How do you pull blue screen keys like this that give you perfect edges?
Attention to detail. Tiny sections where we're pulling out an area there and redoing it and doing a luminance key here and an edge there, or a hand paint fix here and there.
Gotcha. So when you have something that has like blurry edges, you're basically going in and doing little tiny masks around each one of those and doing a specific key for each edge depending on what kind of edge it is.
Correct, yeah. I mean, you could get lucky and do an amazing overall key and pull it off, but I think that was probably 0.0001% chance of that actually happening. I think you'll find the 99.9% of the time it is just the artists working really, really hard to achieve that goal.
Yeah, this is only a fraction of the scene too. This goes on for like 10 minutes. It's like a ridiculous scene.
I think it's 5 minutes and 32 seconds or something long. I know.
Really?
I literally worked on this sequence for a year and a half. We needed to choreograph it in such a detail because all the people that are on the bus, they move around. We're pulling out chairs, we're pulling out poles. They had to pull the windows off because a lot of the times the reflections are just the crew.
Goodness, so you're adding back in the reflections in the windows and of course the background too.
When we're shooting inside, those reflections are natural. The interesting part is actually the arrays and what's going on outside. So you've got people standing out there, you've got blowers, you've got people rocking it, you've got lights that come in, reflectors. The speed at which you're moving at, you can't prevent them from being in the shot. You'll do what you can. You're like, can we move the reflector? And the DP will be like, all right, I can move him out here. Is that any better for you? But you're moving at such a speed. We do these setups every sort of 20 minutes. So if you imagine moving 200 people every 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That shot, we spent probably 7 months talking about how we were going to shoot it because it's a very, very complicated shot.
Can I guess how you did it before?
Yes, please do.
Clint, this is our chance. We're gonna Sherlock Holmes this with the person right in front of us that can actually tell us how it's done.
Put on the goggles. He's probably not even touching Razorfist, right? Razorfist separate plate, and then he's his own plate, and then the background is probably another plate, and then the background is probably another plate, right?
I'm tempted to say that his jacket is CG, but if perhaps his entire body is CG. I could also see that he's like on wires or something.
Where is he being picked from? Is it the hips? And then you got to get that out of there, so the shirt is redone completely, and the legs probably aren't even
damn.
And then you're transitioning out, boom, to a different shot of him right there.
All right, you guys want to let me tell you, or you want to keep going?
Yeah, tell us.
How accurate do you think they are there?
I bet there's probably more additional things that's being added to it. Because the more he's talking, the more I'm like, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, because if you are going to have like a fake body, then there's going to be a whole other list of things that you're going to have to add to make that fakery like look good. So if his body is fake, then that list is probably going to be really long.
I had no idea. I didn't even, because I'm not a VFX guy, you know?
Right.
I didn't consider just how many layers would be involved in that shot. It makes you come away with vastly more appreciation. Because I had I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, I know there's some CGI in there. It's this dumb thought you fart out as this noob who doesn't know anything, and then you see that you're like, oh my God, like, wow. Like, just to make this one moment work that lasts all of 30 seconds, goodness.
Yeah. But it was such a good moment, too, because that was almost that moment in the theater, like when people almost stood up and was like, wow, that was incredible.
I was straight up, I was clapping before halfway into that fight scene. Because, because the thing about it is he said it himself, it's a 5.5 minute fight, but like, I'm not used to that in Marvel movies, or just in general with movies today in America. I'm not used to them having these lengthy fight scenes that are very intricate and beautiful, like the way that one was. So at 2.5 minutes, I'm like, oh, it's done, right? And I was I was clapping, and then it's like, oh no, we still got more to go, bitch.
It's like, oh, I'm not done with you just yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of getting there. It's a real jacket, it's a real shirt, it's real Simu, and it's real legs.
Wow.
It's a CG razor. The entire bust, the foreground, background, and everything else is CG.
Oh, it's way easier that way. Yeah.
So much easier.
And are you doing a transition on him, or is this one long take where you actually move the camera?
This move happens over 4 seconds, and it travels 22 feet. The camera just goes like that.
Yeah.
And we tried getting a motion control camera
control,
to shoot it,
yeah.
but we couldn't get it into the country. The pandemic caused us not to be able to get the Milo. So really what it is it's a rail, and had it so that the camera would drop through a pulley system, and they would jump off these ladder and fall. And it's all landing on blue screen. So all the lighting you're seeing here is the artistry of the Leung compositor who did this, and us just saying, all right, let's bring more interaction to it. And, hopefully we did a good job.
It looks great.
Yes, you did. Wow.
I saw this and I was like, Rush Hour 2, Jackie going up the thing, running up the bamboo and everything.
Yeah, this sequence
That's
is
where I
pretty
saw that
cool.
from. I'm glad that's been bothering me for a while. I'm like, where have I seen this from?
The way that camera just like swoops and then becomes grounded and real suddenly. It's like you barely notice, like, this is all crazy, 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 and boom, real people.
I joke about this sequence because I think he kills 7 people in this sequence. And he does it in such a Charlie Chaplin way that I think that it doesn't really bother anybody. But he does murder
Like that
some
man dies.
poor 49ers. I mean, that guy might have a family. I don't know.
Ooh, I love these kind of falls. Brutal. All right, so this shot right here. Woo!
That's sick.
I'm going to be inclined to say this guy's CG all the way up until right here. Now it's real.
I think the beginning is real, and
Did you like this sequence?
I did. I had that thing in the back of my head because I'd seen it before. And I was like, I've seen this being done before. And more than just that one Jackie Chan film as well. But their take on it was still refreshing to me, so I did enjoy it.
I saw it on YouTube before the movie came out because they put it out as a means to like gin up excitement for the film. And I did a reaction to it. And like watching it now again, because I'd seen it, of course, in the film twice, in addition to doing the YouTube reaction. I think, especially when you show it side by side with Rush Hour 2, what it misses is some kind of realism for me. Because I can tell that it's a stage. It's something in the color, in the way that it's shot. It's the camera's doing what feels impossible sometimes, and that's a dead giveaway that you're watching something that is partially animated in some degree, like that's got some kind of effects on it. And I think the greatest thing is when you have a David Fincher situation where the effects are done so well that you don't even really notice them. It just makes it feel more real and lifelike.
Right.
And I think that's what's missing. There's sort of this uncanny valley thing that happens in the fight sometimes. In addition to that, when you compare this with the bus fight, it doesn't compare in my opinion. The visceral feeling of the bus fight is like way up here, and this like Rush Hour 2 thing is like more down here for me. Like, just because even when Shang-Chi elbows the guy, like little things, it doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like just a dance. Right. Which, depending on your perspective, that might be okay.
Yeah, I think emotionally you feel how close the bus is, and you feel it feels like a really, really close quarters. Whereas on this one, even though the stakes are way higher because you're like hundreds of feet into the air, it doesn't come across as claustrophobic, if that makes sense. Maybe it's because of the way the camera is panning, so it doesn't raise the stakes as high as the bus scene. It was still beautifully done to me, but I can see where where you're going from,
Yeah.
coming from regarding the stakes as compared to the two scenes. Yes.
Yeah, you can't have like 8 bus fight scenes in the movie. You get one bus fight scene, and then
I think the end is real.
Or you could do the whole thing for real. Who knows?
Or it's for real, 'cause
it's really
it's
hard
like-
to say because there's this Marvel gloss that's like on every Marvel film.
Yeah.
And it makes the CG and all the compositing and all the real stuff all blend together really, really well.
Yeah.
I would say that pretty much from the outset, Chris said we shoot as much real as we possibly can.
Cool.
So with this particular shot, the two guys on the left are real, and the guy on the right, he's digital all the way through to the end due to the amazing animation done by Rodeo Effects.
Oh, that's pretty good.
We did actually have a performer doing that, but we needed to just tweak it enough that it pulled it out of the live action.
So you
Hold on. He said they had a real
Yes, he
performer
drops 3
actually do
stories
that, though,
down,
really?
And he swings around and he does this kind of move, but he needs to do it in a way that's threatening. He's trying to come down with the purpose of taking out Shang-Chi.
He said Shang-Chi, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
So I just want
He
to note
did.
that.
I caught it.
So it makes so much more sense of that moment that he is fully CGI. That's what he said, right? The guy was CGI.
Well, yeah. Well, they had a real guy do it, and then they CGI'd it because apparently the intent of how he landed wasn't aggressive enough. That's what I'm taking from what he was saying. So
Well-
they CGI'd it.
If you look at Shang-Chi's reaction in that moment, it doesn't have that feeling of there's a guy coming at me right now, and I'm taking this hit because he kicked me or whatever it is, or I'm diving because he's about to hurt me. Like, it doesn't have that sensation of connection. You know what I mean? There's something missing in that moment that I've felt every single time I see this moment, which should be cool because it's
Right.
doing this crazy movement. The guy's doing this crazy thing. It should be exciting, but for me, it's like, no, something feels off. That's my reaction to it.
So I think Destin suggested that we go with having him come and just kick really hard. And we watched many videos of parkour guys and they tuck up really tight and then explode out. And that's sort of a very sort of martial arts kind of move. And we thought that would sort of sit nicely. I'm not a fan of sort of, losing weight on CG characters. So that's, even if it's a little heavier than you would expect,
That's better.
it's better to lean a little bit into that.
Yeah.
And what we're
I do
looking at
like
here in the
I do like his
background is the
philosophy.
scaffolding actually there. And
No,
the
it's all
part,
digital.
So everything's
Yeah.
digital.
But because it's all on a mirrored surface, it's reflecting the environment. And if you notice, the camera never once stays still in this entire sequence. So the camera constantly moving means all those reflections had to be individually rendered. And this one has about 110 shots in the sequence. And so their
Goodness.
black uniform on a very dark night in a dark city, the lighting and the billboard placement all needed to be meticulously done so that you could silhouette everything.
That's really, really clever and also incredibly time consuming. That's ridiculous.
And a lot of the time we actually were confused what direction the camera was facing. You needed to know that you were looking at a building rather than looking through scaffolding at the city on the other side.
Interesting.
And so we did a lot of work and actually trying to figure out how the reflection looked, and you knew specifically when you were looking at the city versus the reflection. You'll see all the reflections have a slight lift in their densities to help with the readability.
Oh, I see. So like all the black levels have been kind of just bumped slightly. So even the darkest part of the reflection is still slightly brighter than the darkest part of the people in front of it.
Correct.
Some of it's
That
a little
obviously
warped,
meant
too.
That we needed to split the reflection off from the main one, so they needed to even more roto.
This is ridiculous.
Complicated.
That is mind-blowing. I have a stronger appreciation from an effects standpoint for that scene.
Yeah.
The amount of work is just absurd.
It's one of those things you don't appreciate the details until you hear what the details are. Like I saw the reflection. I can go back into my mind's eye and be there while I'm watching this for the first time. And I do see the reflection.
Yeah.
But never once did I ever consider that was a CGI, constant frame by frame that had to be rendered every single time because the camera's in constant motion. And when I think about it in those terms, my jaw's like on the ground. I can't imagine how much money it spent to render all of that and the team of how many people it must have taken to do all of that. Good Lord.
If I'm producing this, I'm going, how about there's no reflections? How about these are just boarded up because this part is under construction and this perfect
Right.
excuse? Because then you can swing the camera around all you want and not have to worry about painting in any of that stuff. Because that is hella complicated. I can imagine the animation artists just pulling their hair out, trying to with a fine-tooth comb, go through each frame and make sure.
Frame by frame.
Because it looks, it looks really good. And they mentioned something interesting, which is they raised the black levels. And were they just talking about the reflections, or were they talking about in general because it's nighttime, they're wearing black pants, it's dark clothing? What were they raising the black levels on?
They were raising the black levels on the reflections so that you can have something can click in your mind that you know that there's a difference between what you're seeing in the reflection,
Gotcha.
between and what you think is practically real.
Gotcha.
Because it's all CG.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but you have to be able to do something to trick your mind into seeing the difference in the reflection.
Yeah. Having gone over that moment a couple times that the guy swings through, it's very quick. And because the camera's moving, you miss it. That's what it is. Right. It's like Shang-Chi actually does like avoid the kick when the guy kicks the glass. If you go back and watch it, but because the camera's swinging around and everything's happening so fast, your brain doesn't even register that Shang-Chi like moved out of the way before diving. My brain almost rewrote that as he got kicked because it was all happening so quick. And so it would have been great if either the camera slowed down or they weren't concentrating on moving the camera every single moment. Like, I don't necessarily need the camera to constantly be moving. It's a fight scene, for fuck's sake. Like, it's pretty exciting stuff.
I think if you would have taken that fight scene and put it in like 80s action cinema, especially like even old school like Jackie Chan type cinema, where they would have just put the camera on a solid surface on a thing and then just have them like fight it out. I think it probably would have given a different, maybe a cooler look.
Yeah.
And it probably would have been cheaper on top of it as well. But because we're in this day and age where action just has to be like this in order to keep like that 2.5 second attention span that we have now, them
The answer is
moving.
2.5.
Thank you, Siri. I think that's why they did it, to make it beautiful. I think that shot is a sign of the time.
They needed to even more roto.
This is ridiculous.
Complicated.
It's ridiculous.
But isn't it cool?
Yeah, no,
cool.
it's amazing.
Hey, to all y'all that have just stumbled upon VFX Artists React for the first time, consider subscribing. You're gonna have a good time. Lots of other people have kept coming back. I think you're gonna be one of them.
So I heard that you snuck a shot into this movie.
Snuck a shot in?
You snuck something in.
We always in visual effects try and sneak something in. No, I mean, you know, there's all this talk about sort of virtual camera work and all the technology that's coming along with Mandalorian. And there's a shot in this particular one where I did a virtual camera work, but it's so old school that it's amazing. You can take old-fashioned techniques and just apply them right into the middle of something so complex.
It's at the end, right? The helicopter shot?
No, it's in the beginning. It's right in the beginning. 3 shots in. I know exactly. It's 57 frames long.
Oh my God, it is probably
It's
not
right
joking.
here. The reason it was so interesting and difficult is because when you're prevising shots, you can go out to a previs company and you say, look, there's a billboard, there's a helicopter, and there's an explosion. But when you actually try and put it into a 239 aspect, the audience needs to know what they're looking at instantly because the shot is only just over 2 seconds long. You've got a little hint of the billboard up until that point. Now, the problem with a billboard is it's a giant light source and you don't want the people going, look, a billboard, and then the shot's gone. And you're like, hang on, how is he now doing that? And why is the window gone? You don't want that confusion. We did a couple of versions in previs and we were trying to throw different ideas, a camera up top looking down and then a camera coming around the back. But all of those things would sort of miss one of those factors. You wouldn't see the billboard or you would only see the explosion. So I ended up taking my son's model aeroplane, suspending it on a ruler with a piece of nylon string, getting 2 chairs, and then just basically framed the chairs knowing where the billboard was. And I would just do different kinds of camera moves, just filming this little model aircraft. And then I would take that, I'd track it and try different ideas and change different speeds and then tweak it, and then ended up generating a camera to show that to the director, and they loved it. And that was my version of a virtual camera.
I'd love to
great.
see the official Marvel breakdown where it's like doing all the wipes and then it just shows like.
And it shows my garage. It just shows my garage.
It seems like your solution was just to simply have a shot that orbited, started kind of focused on the billboard, and then turned our attention over to where the explosion happened, kind of pivoting around the helicopter in the center.
Yeah, the helicopter was not as important. The billboard was sort of like reasonably important. But in this particular one, that explosion kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because we needed to draw your eye to it.
So let me understand this. That little thing he shot with, I guess, with his phone, that was the map for that shot?
That was the key frame. Yeah, that was the frame that they used for the real one.
That's amazing.
And they just subbed out the toy plane and the chair and everything else.
That's amazing. Dude, that kind of blows my mind. I'm on board with what Clint said there. Like, I would have loved to see like the render passes and all that stuff, and then see like that's the initial shot.
It's a great lesson on clarity because it's so important. If your audience is confused, then who cares? It doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a great story, though. I love that. It's like you do what you can with what you got, and like you don't have to do the whole thing. You make it work.
You know, this is actually fairly traditional movie making on this film. It looks technologically savvy, and we are using amazing technology, and we have all the gadgets and all the gizmos and amazing rigs and so on. But it's all just real sets, real rigs that are really moving. There's no fantastical shots in here, and if there is a fantastical shot, it's actually done with rigs that can now do fantastical things.
For people out there who've been wanting to get into this as a career, do you have any suggestions for anybody who's trying to get into it?
Don't get into it unless you're passionate. You have to be passionate, and if you're not, you won't survive. So I'm just ridiculously passionate about movie making or just storytelling, and being able to do it in any way, shape, or form that I can is why I enjoy this so much.
That's awesome. You guys may have heard of the series Gymkhana, where Ken Block goes out there and does incredible stunt driving. Well, Joe here made his own version with his son called Koalakana, where they took a little Tesla plastic toy car.
Yeah, we found it in the rubbish and we did it up to crazy, and we do about 20 miles an hour.
They modded
Oh
it.
shit, that looks
Like,
dope.
they put in battery and stuff.
Yeah.
It's actually really good and a great example of some awesome filmmaking you can just do on your own with buddies or whomever. It only has like 300 views. I think it'd be really cool to get with the old VFX Artists
Let's
React.
try and get to 500 views.
I'm sure it's got like
Let's
break
give it a
that.
little love here.
half a million
break
now.
that.
I would certainly appreciate
Yeah.
I
it.
think it'd be really cool.
That was dope.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
that was dope. I mean, it gives me an even greater appreciation for the film now, given knowing what went into it, knowing like the complexities of these shots, of these scenes, that we have so much content, man. There's so much content out there that you just sort of take it all for granted. You know, you let it wash over you like, whatever. It's just, blah, 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 and now it's just in the background. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. Hours and hours and hours of painstaking work. Doesn't matter. This is whatever. Because the burden's not on the audience, because we have so much coming at us all the time between all the different platforms and film companies. It's just a constant barrage of content that you can't possibly appreciate everything on the same level. But like this breakdown video certainly helps to achieve that, at least with one film at a time. Knowing just that simple fact that all those reflections were animated, I take it for granted. That is so well done, and with the reflections specifically are so well done because my brain just said yes. I didn't question it.
Yeah.
My brain questioned other things happening in that scene, but not the reflections.
You said something earlier that just really stuck with me, and I remember you saying something to the fact that the director of the movie pretty much like knew his lane. He was like, okay, I've got a pretty good vision of what it is that I want to do, and I'm going to go ahead and talk to people that are much smarter than me and way more experienced than me that can make this vision come to pass.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of shut up, just to be like, listen, I kind of want this to happen. All right. And then you talk to the person that is the head of that department and say, can you make this happen? And then he'll give you either a thumbs up or a thumbs down, maybe ask you a couple little small questions, and then you walk away.
Yeah.
You know, you go ahead and let the pros. This isn't one of them kind of situations where you go in there and you go into the video effects room and you nitpick and be like, nah, I like this light here. Nah. You tell them what you want, and then you be happy about the type of finished product that you have, and then you let that in-between guy, the guy that is the head of the special effects department, make a master class out of your visions. It's so complex. I would love to know that these directors aren't putting too much of themselves into the process and just letting these artists just paint freely and let them have fun in their own playground.
When I watched, I guess, the trailer for Shang-Chi, I think it must have been in the trailer that I noticed. I can't remember when exactly I said this, especially considering Destin Daniel Cretton's earlier work. Like, you compare that to Shang-Chi, it's two totally, like, what? That's the same guy? It doesn't even make any sense, right? I had a theory about it. I'm like, my theory was that Destin Daniel Cretton listened. At least with regards to the fight scenes in the martial arts. Like, he listened. That was my theory, and when I asked him about it in an interview, he said exactly what I thought he might say, which is, he was surrounded by the right people, and he listened to them, and he acknowledged them. And one of the things he also acknowledged was that a lot of these guys, these stunt people, aren't just stunt people. They're not just choreographers, they're directors themselves. And he listened to their vision. He looked at what they saw, and he's like, okay, cool, let's do that. And so I would imagine with that sort of philosophy in mind, he did the same thing with those complicated scenes with the VFX people. I thought this was so cool, this video. Like, it elevated my appreciation for Shang-Chi in a way I wasn't expecting. because like you know that there's hard work involved because there always is, but golly, he didn't talk that much about the dragons, like about
No,
the third
he
act.
didn't.
Yeah, they avoided that conversation for some reason. I thought that was cool. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Make sure to follow Sintel on the social media and on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sintel. You can follow Corridor Crew. There's a link in the description below for the video that we just watched. You can hit that with an upvote and subscribe to their channel from there. Check out our other reactions, reviews, short films, vlogs, and interviews. I'm Jaby Koay. It's your boy. Peace out.